A couple weeks ago, I brought you 10 players that you need to draft in fantasy this year. I'm doing the opposite today. I'm bringing you 10 names that you should absolutely not draft. Leave them on your board so your buffoon league mates can draft them instead. All right, 10 players for you that I'm not going to be drafting anywhere. The first player is Michael Pittman Jr. On ESPN right now, he is ranked as a wide receiver 12 in ADP. In my projections right now, I have him ranked as a wide receiver 26 on the season. And look, this is really not so much about Michael Pittman. I think he's a very talented player. This is more about outside factors and changes that are happening in the organization that he can't really control. Last year, he had a career high in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and fantasy points per game. I'm really selling it to you, aren't I? Like, wow, you're really telling me not to draft this guy? Then he gets a big contract extension. So what's the issue? The issue is we have no idea if his current upcoming quarterback that he's going to be playing with can support him in fantasy football. Certainly, I have no doubts that he will not finish as a top 12 wide receiver with this new quarterback in town, Anthony Richardson. Last year, that career year, it was supported by Gardner Minshew, who is now in Las Vegas. This year, he'll be playing with last year's rookie draft pick, Anthony Richardson, the big behemoth monster out of Florida. And his biggest weakness, A-Rich's biggest weakness coming out of Florida, was his inaccurate passing, inconsistent passing, not only down the field, but even in short areas. At Florida, Anthony Richardson was only a one-year starter, which was in 2022. And in that year, he completed under 54% of his passes. If you look at all the quarterbacks in college football last year, that would have ranked 271st. And his wide receiver one on his team had only 661 receiving yards. That was the highest total on his team. That ranked 123rd amongst wide receivers in college football. Now, clearly, college football is a different game, but that wide receiver one was Ricky Pearsall, who just got drafted in the first round by the 49ers this year because last year he had a different quarterback named Graham Mertz who helped him get the ball a little bit better. Let's look at Anthony Richardson's first year in the NFL. He only played 4 games, and he was only healthy for 2 of them. In 2 of those games, he left early with an injury. But still, he completed under 60% of his passes. He ranked 61st in the NFL in completion percentage. From A-Rich's first season in the NFL, we don't have a very large sample size of him playing with Michael Pittman. In fact, we only have weeks 1 and weeks 4 that Anthony Richardson was healthy and he finished a game. And in those 2 weeks, polar opposites. In week 1, Michael Pittman dominates with 23.7 fantasy points on 11 targets. And in week 4, Michael Pittman only gets targeted 5 times and only 1 reception under 5 fantasy points. Lastly, this team just added a talented wide receiver in Adonai Mitchell in the NFL draft. What will his role be this year? Overall, wide receiver 12 is ridiculously high. He shouldn't be anywhere near that rank right now on ESPN. I even think he's too high on Underdog, so I'm going to be passing on him. Talented player, but I don't think they're going to pass as much. I don't know if I can trust Anthony Richardson, and there are more mouths to feed. All right, the second player that I personally will not be drafting, Kyren Williams, running back for the Los Angeles Rams. And funnily enough, at the moment, I have him ranked higher in my projections than ESPN. I think he's going to have a good year. I actually think he's going to be good, but there are enough red flags outside of my projections, circumstantial red flags, for me to pass on him and let someone else in my league find out if he's actually going to be that guy. Sean McVay's running back rooms have been a roller coaster in recent years. Okay, this team just drafted Blake Corum with a day 2 selection, which is very good draft capital for a running back in what was a very weak class, and he still spent a day 2 pick on a running back. I think Blake Corum will have a role, and is there a chance that Kyren Williams' opportunities could be slightly pulled back from last year? Because look at last year, he was one of the most dominant opportunity-based backs in the league. He had the number 1 snap percentage at over 83%. He had the second highest percentage of his team's rushing attempts. And by the way, he had the 7th best yards before contact per attempt, meaning Sean McVay set him up really well. He didn't have to fight through as much contact as other people. Why can't Blake Corum be successful in that offense? And Sean just has a history of cycling through running backs. He hasn't had a running back with back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons since 2017, 2018. He also hasn't had a running back repeat as a team's leading rusher since 2019. In 2020, it was Cam Akers, then Sony Michel the next year, then Cam Akers, then Kyren Williams. I think he has a shot, Kyren that is, at being a top 3 fantasy running back. I really think that's his ceiling, but there are too many red flags. His floor is too shaky that I'm personally going to be avoiding him. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, though. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and do me a favor, smash that like button. I got a like goal on today's video of 75 likes. Hopefully with your help, we can get there. All right, the third player. Don't hate me for saying this. This is coming from a Chiefs fan, okay? But I will not be drafting Patrick Mahomes. I certainly won't be drafting him as the #1 overall quarterback, as his current rank indicates over on ESPN. That's ridiculous. Mahomes shouldn't be even in the conversation for quarterback 1, respectfully. Again, coming from a Chiefs fan. The last time Mahomes finished as a quarterback 1 on a per-game basis was 6 years ago in 2018. That was his first year as a starter when he threw 50 touchdowns. Last year, the team's philosophy completely changed. They went from a high-flying offense to more of a defensive, run-focused, efficient type of team, and they won the Super Bowl doing so. But Patrick Mahomes had his lowest fantasy points per game of his career, 18.4. That was 10th amongst quarterbacks on a per-game basis. And look, I know they added Hollywood Brown. I'm excited for that. I know they added Xavier Worthy. He's a freak with that speed. But that was a blueprint that worked for them. They're still a very good defense. I just don't think Mahomes is going to put up the kind of fantasy points that you want him to in order to spend, a top 3 round pick in your fantasy draft on him. So I'm going to be not drafting him there. If I do draft a quarterback that high, it will be someone who has the ability to rush for 10 touchdowns, like a Jalen Hurts or a Josh Allen, for example. All right, the fourth player that I am personally not drafting is Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 26 on ESPN. I have him ranked as a wide receiver 37. All I keep hearing this offseason is that Calvin Ridley is going to be the unquestionable #1 wide receiver in Tennessee. Look, Ridley got a bag, but DeAndre Hopkins is still Himothy, okay? DeAndre Hopkins hasn't fallen off the face of the earth. He is still one of the better players at his position. I mean, there's an argument that Hopkins was better than Calvin Ridley even just last year. I think both Ridley and Hopkins will get their opportunities, and I project them to have a similar target share. I do not think Calvin Ridley is just going to come in and dominate, and DeAndre Hopkins is going to take some huge back seat. Last year, D-Hop commanded over 29% of his team's target share in Tennessee with this same team. Meanwhile, Calvin Ridley in Jacksonville commanded 23%, so 7% less of Jacksonville's offense, even though he was their wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville. So do not be surprised if both Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins are sharing the spotlight in Tennessee. And why draft Calvin Ridley at wide receiver 26 prices when you can draft DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver 31 prices, or get an unquestioned alpha and George Pickens on his own team at wide receiver 32 prices? It's just too high for Calvin Ridley, and I like Calvin Ridley. All right, the fifth player, it's actually a combination of players. These are guys that I will not be drafting, and it's from the same team, Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. I'm just not going to be drafting these two running backs. And ultimately, I just think that these guys are unfortunately going to cancel each other out for fantasy purposes. This team is not going to rush the ball at the same volume we have been used to seeing for the last 4 to 5 years with Derrick Henry. The offense is going to change. They're going to run the ball less. And it's impossible to really define which of these backs have the important fantasy roles. They kind of feel like the same player in a way, right? Tajay Spears in 2023, only 23% of the rushing market share, but 15% target share. Not commanding a lot of the, offense on the ground, but certainly impactful through the air. The issue is both of these running backs seem to have the same strengths and weaknesses, and they don't really seem to complement each other all that well. I think it makes sense for the team to get two of those guys kind of rotating in, but I don't know who's going to be the guy. I'm not sure anyone will be. I think it might be a split backfield entirely, and I'm not going to pretend that I know how to guess that. So I'm going to be avoiding it completely. I'm going to get into my next player, but you do not have to wait until the fantasy season gets here to play fantasy football. You watching, you can play fantasy football right here today. You can get into a real draft that has a real prize pot in it. All you got to do is sign up to Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code LAND when you sign up. You can sign up with the direct link in the pinned comment, and we're going to match your deposit up to 50%. Sorry, we're going to match your deposit 50% all the way up to $250. So that's $125 free dollars on us just for you signing up with our promo code. And not only do you get to do drafts, but you also get to play pick'ems. Maybe you watch the MLB, or maybe you're into soccer or whatever other sport is happening right now. Well, you can use the pick'ems, the special pick'ems. I know they'll have them for the NBA Finals. For example, there will be a pick'em that says over under 2 points for Luka Doncic, right? That's going to help you kind of win some money there for free. The latest one with the Champions League was Vinicius Jr. over 0.5 shots. Okay. So sign up with the promo code LAND. Let's get into some drafts together. The time is now to start having some fun with fantasy football. All right. The sixth player that I'm going to be avoiding is Keenan Allen as he moves over to Chicago. He's ranked as a wide receiver 30. I have him 20 spots below that. And I think that might be too aggressive. I'll recognize that. Look, for 7 years in a row, Keenan Allen has been one of the more dominant wide receivers in fantasy football, commanding a ridiculous high target share every single year. 7 years in a row, he has finished as a wide receiver 13 or higher on a per game basis in fantasy football. Here is the issue. Things have now changed. You are no longer the number one unquestioned wide receiver with Justin Herbert. You are now playing alongside DJ Moore, number one, top 10 pick in Rome Odunze. While Keenan is a fantastic receiver, he's also playing alongside two incredible receivers. This is the best receiver room he's ever been a part of. And DJ Moore, at minimum, is just as deserving of a dominant target share as Keenan Allen. So he's going to be fighting with some real dogs for targets. Moore, Odunze, Kmet, and even DeAndre Swift, who's a great pass-catching running back as well. And not to mention, he's playing with a rookie quarterback. More often times than not, a rookie quarterback cannot support multiple fantasy weapons. Last year, CJ Stroud was an outlier, but there are way more often times where it doesn't happen for a rookie quarterback connected to a rookie, to a wide receiver, right? All-world talent, Keenan Allen is, but I just want to steer clear personally. I think there are better options at that price point. All right, the seventh player I'm completely avoiding, J.K. Dobbins. ESPN has him ranked as the 38th running back. Are you kidding me? What the hell are we even talking about? Respectfully, family-friendly show, okay? But what are we even talking about? RB38? How can you trust someone that's been completely untrustworthy for 2 years in a row? I mean, he has played 9 out of 51 possible regular season games in the past 3 seasons. That's just 17.6% of his games played in the past 3 years. How can you trust a running back who has torn his Achilles? This is the worst injury you can possibly sustain at the running back position. Seriously, someone comment and tell me a running back that's dominated after an Achilles tear. I would love to know, because I can't think of a single one. Deontay Foreman's been good, but Marlon Mack, Arian Foster, Cam Akers, all these guys are completely irrelevant after that injury. So I will not be drafting him. I'd rather have Gus Edwards. I'd rather have Kamani Vidal. The eighth player I'm not drafting, Chris Godwin. I like Chris Godwin. Everybody hates Chris. No, I like Chris Godwin. But here's the reality. ESPN's wide receiver 34, my wide receiver 47. Most leagues are 12-man leagues, meaning at minimum, you want your wide receiver to finish top 24 in order to give you a shot at winning your matchup that week in fantasy football. Okay? Chris Godwin, last year, in 13 out of 17 games, finished outside the top 24 of fantasy finishes for wide receivers each week. He finished with less than 15 PPR points in 13 out of 17 games, meaning 76%, over 76% of the time, you were unhappy with Chris Godwin for fantasy football on any given week. Unfortunately, Chris Godwin is not the favorite in Baker Mayfield's eyes. Baker Mayfield is obsessed with Mike Evans, and can you really blame him? I just don't think I want to bet on Chris Godwin. I think there are higher upside plays at that spot. The ninth player I'm avoiding is Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is currently ranked as the RB27. He's my RB47 at this point. The reality is, even though Nick Chubb was injured early in the 2023 season, we have no idea what his timetable is for the 2024 year. Yes, he was injured early, but it was a nasty injury. You guys remember that injury, right? They showed it on the, in the stadium, and everyone's like, oh no, I don't want to watch that one again. That's how bad the injury was. This is not a Breece Hall injury, ACL tear, clean cut, where it's easy to recover quickly from. This is a nasty Javonte Williams, J.K. Dobbins, multiple injuries inside a knee type of tear. And there's a video that's come out quite recently of him running track at a local gym, and he just doesn't look right. And it's been quite some time. So look, if reports come out in August that Nick Chubb is fully healthy, he's ready to go, I will change my mind. But at this point, I just think Jerome Ford is good enough. Deontay Foreman is good enough to allow them to give Nick Chubb some time to really heal. And the expectation should not be what we saw Breece Hall do coming off an ACL tear. Way more times than not, running backs are not very good the first year removed from their ACL tear. So I won't be drafting him at that price. And the last player, this is a little controversial. I actually really didn't want to bring this guy, but I had to think of 10 names, and I wanted to bring you a tight end that at minimum I'm kind of concerned about. George Kittle, the tight end 5 on ESPN. I think that's a little bit too high. I love George Kittle, but there are already a lot of mouths to feed in San Francisco. CMC, Ayuk, Debo, and I get it. He just had a great year, but they just added another wide receiver in the first round of the NFL draft. I mean, George Kittle's target share is already going down every year since 2019. From 28% to 24% to 23 to 19 to 20, hovering around there. Adding a first round wide receiver, he's going to get some of the targets. He's going to, eat into someone's pie. And unfortunately, if we have George Kittle dipping into the teens in target share, that's really going to concern me personally. He's efficient enough. He gets in the red zone enough. But what if the touchdowns scale back this year? That's really what he was thriving on last year. So I'll probably be avoiding him personally. But those are 10 names that I am probably not drafting this year. Let me know what you think in the comments below, respectfully. Okay, you can agree to disagree. But hey, if you want our rankings over here on the Fantasyland Football for best ball, for redraft, one quarterback, super flex, then use the promo code LAND. Become a Mother Flocker member on the Flock Fantasy website. You'll get our rankings, which update all throughout in season and preseason. You'll get access to our draft guide for the fantasy season, which will come out in about a month's time. And you'll get everything else you see here on your screen, as well as supporting the channel over here and keeping the lights on. I appreciate you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Subscribe. All up. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.